Europe closer to the Antichrist.
We can see another article saying, unable to confront the migrant crisis, Europe is committing suicide. Literally. So after you create the crisis, and there is a crisis, now you create division. It's a known tactic. You create division in different ways. First, you create division within the countries. For the first time. By the way, I was in Berlin the week before the elections, and I already saw what's going to happen. You see, I told you I'm not a prophet. You know that. But everyone could see that the crisis is leading to division, and the division is going to be manifested in the election results. And guess what happened? Merkel, yes, she won, but in a much smaller majority. And guess who, for the first time since the fall of the Third Reich, receives a representation in the German Reichstag, in the German parliament? It is a very far right-wing nationalist party called Alternative für Deutschland, Alternative for Germany. It was a stunning success for Germany and Europe. What the stunning success of that political party meant for Germany and Europe is that Germany from within is divided. Europe from within is divided. You had the same thing. We just heard about how Macron was elected. Marine Le Pen was held by the left as almost Nazi. They sold everyone that if she's going to win, we're going to go back to the Vichy days, that it's going to be fascist ruling. Therefore, doesn't matter who it is, vote for the other one. Do you know him? No. We know he's a guy, a good-looking guy, he's married to his teacher. But come on, is that how you choose a president to one of the largest economies in the world? So within the countries, people are divided. And then, of course, there is between the countries division. European states deeply divided on refugee crisis before key summit that they had. And may I say, you can clearly see the core of Western Europe divided from the eastern flank. The illegal immigration divides Europe and the eastern part, as the eastern part, such as Poland. We heard about Hungary. By the way, the Hungarian president confronted Soros. Soros is Hungarian. Soros paid for the high school and the university tuition for Mr. Orban, just so you know, for the prime minister of Hungary. They used to be good friends until that prime minister said, well, everything is nice when you help me, but you're about to destroy my country right now. I'm not going to stand for that. So the Czech Republic, Slovenia, and more refused to open their borders. So you see, just as Daniel said, it's going to be a sort of an empire, but it's not going to be that united. It's going to be divided. The iron and clay that don't mix together. That which the stone is going to smash, and we know, we dealt with who the stone is last time, is indeed divided. We heard that President Juncker delivered a State of the Union address on September 13, and in his address, he fleshed out his plan for an EU-wide army, which he is attempting to push through without the consent of the voters. Not only that, today, Europe is having two different institutions. There is the European Commission and the European Council. He wants to combine the two, and that will be a move that would transform the EU leadership and consolidate authority in a single figure who would campaign for the post. And that's going to be for the first time since the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe will have a single ruler, not by war, not Hitler, but in peaceful means. You have to understand, if you go back, Europe was under the Roman Empire from 27 BC to 395 AD. That was the Roman Empire that Daniel spoke about as the one that destroyed the temple in Jerusalem at the time. But then he continued speaking of it in future terms, as if it will be revived. But that was the height of the Roman Empire in 117 AD. Look at how big it used to be. Very, very vast, all over Western Europe, and of course, Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, and the northern African coast. But many of you may not know that once the European emperor, the Roman emperor, converted to Christianity. Well, he didn't really convert. He said if you can't beat them, join them. His mother is the one who converted, Helena. This caused a division, and while the Byzantine Empire moved to the east and Rome is no longer the capital, and that's why it wasn't called anymore Roman Empire, it moved to Byzantion, which is Istanbul of today, but it was also Constantinople, named after Constantine. Then we had the Western Roman Empire in 395 to 476, and that is all the way on the very end of France, Portugal, and Spain, with some of the coast of northern Africa. And the Byzantine Empire continued all the way until 1453, when we have the final destruction of it. Now comes the interesting thing. I was in Berlin, and I went to see some things from different time periods, and I was asking myself, why is it that Hitler called his kingdom the Third Reich? I mean, everybody's talking about the Third Reich, but what was the First Reich? What was the Second Reich? Why are we in the Third already? And I realized that apparently the First Reich, if you go to Wikipedia and Google that name, you'll find out that when the Pope commissioned the German king to rule Western Europe, it is considered both the First Reich in their history and the Holy Roman Empire. Did you know that? Did you know that there was a Holy Roman Empire? From 800 AD to 1806. It is Napoleon who put an end to it. That little guy was very active. And that's the map of the Holy Roman Empire. Guess who comprised the majority, and who is the heart of it, and who is the center of it, of the First Reich? Absolutely Germany. Then came the Second Reich. When you look at the history books, it's the German Empire under the German Kaiser Wilhelm and others, that was there from 1871 to 1918, end of World War I. And that was the map of that one. Then, of course, Germany went through some other parts in their history, not too pleasant, because they had to recover from a very humiliating treaty in Versailles. And then in 1923, there's a book written by a German author called Arthur Müller van der Broek, which is the ideology which heavily influenced the Nazi Party. And the book formulated an ideal of a national empowerment which resounded throughout a Germany desperate to rebuild from the Treaty of Versailles. And he called his book Das Dritte Reich, the Third Reich. And this is why when Hitler came into power in 1933, until the end of that horrible time period, it was known as the Third Reich, and his expansion plan were, of course, way beyond Europe. He wanted to take over the entire Russian part. And now the question is remain, are we going to see a fourth one? It's interesting because definitely Berlin situated itself to be much more than just a city for the Germans. You go to and we saw it last time, you go to the Berlin Museum of Pergamon, you see that since 1930, the altar of Zeus, known as the seat of Satan, taken piece by piece from Pergamon in Turkey, all the way brought to Berlin. You see, you guys protested for the reconstruction of the Arch of Baal. This is not a reconstruction, that's the real deal. And it is in Berlin. Not only that, remember, the Ishtar Gate, one of the gates of Babylon, was taken by German archaeologists. The whole thing is in Berlin right now. Berlin has the gate of Babylon and the seat of Satan in its midst. Now, I told you that Mr. Junkers is thinking about a new military power. What you may not know is that Foreign Report reported May 22nd of this year, Germany is quietly building a European army under its command. Quite interesting, isn't it? When they reported that the former president or chancellor of Germany, Mr. Helmut Kohl, died, and he's the one who actually was the architect of the reunification of Germany once the wall fell in 1990. When they reported that he died and there is a memorial service, I expected all the world leaders to fly to Berlin, or to fly to Germany at least, because he's a German guy and that's Germany's business. I was found dumbfounded that his entire memorial service was not even in Germany. It was in the Parliament of Europe, without even a German flag, but with the European one. In other words, Germany is positioning itself not as Germany, but as what? The ruler of? Correct, of Europe.
We're playing Amir Tsarfati's second message given at Understanding the Times 2017, Europe Closer to the Antichrist. Let's get back to Amir and his message.
I stumbled at a survey that was done 3 to 4 months ago throughout the European Union. Several questions strike my attention. First of all, how likely do you expect that a terrorist attack like what happened in Paris last year, in Brussels, or in Berlin could happen in your country? Look what happened. 37% said very likely, and 48% said somewhat likely. You're talking about more than 80% of the people believe that there is an imminent threat of terrorism. How serious a problem do you believe that is the illegal immigration are coming into your country? Very serious, 50%. Only somewhat serious, 31%. 81% see that as a problem. How much do you trust the following institution? Your own government. 51% say not at all. So, when you create a crisis and you create division, you create distrust of these people in their own countries and their own leaders, then somebody is looking for someone else. The chaos, despair, and hopelessness are needed in order to wait for a deliverer. And they will accept him the moment he surfaces. I think we quoted that several times. Now, Michelle Bachmann just gave us an outstanding report on what's going on in Europe regarding the demographical issue. Of course, the Europeans are committing, in a sense, a suicide. George Weigel, a distinguished senior fellow of Washington, D.C.'s Ethics and Public Policy, he attended the European Parliament and he gave a speech. And he wrote, Europe is committing demographic suicide, systematically depopulating itself in what British historian Niall Ferguson has called the greatest sustained reduction in European populations since the Black Death in the 14th century. I'm not talking about the immigration. The immigration is their answer. I'm talking about the Europeans themselves. This unwillingness to create the future in the most elemental sense by creating new generation is at the root of many of Europe's problems, including its difficulties assimilating immigrants and its fiscal distress. When an entire continent, healthier, wealthier, and more secure than ever before, deliberately chooses sterility, and the most basic cause for that must lie in the realm of human spirit, in a certain sorrowing about the very mystery of being. Now, it's interesting because after his speech, the Italian representative in the European Parliament came to him and said, look, we know we're finished. We're trying to arrange these things so that we can die comfortably in our beds. Don't you Yanks come over here and start stirring things up. They understand that they are on their deathbed. They're not interested in your opinion. They're not interested in warning. They are just interested in remaining comfortable in their deathbed.